In this episode of True Crimes Unfold, we unpack the case details of shocking massacre of the royal Nepalese family in 2021. A deeply tragic and mysterious event that shocked the nation and left it in shambles. Please note that events and scenarios in this video may be graphic for some viewers. Discretion is advised. Details of the videos are taken from actual case files. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're listening from, what type of cases you'd like us to cover next, and we'll make sure to add them to our list. And don't forget to subscribe to get new stories as soon as they're released. Now, settle in, get ready, and let's begin. It was supposed to be a night of laughter, unity, and royal tradition. But by the time dawn broke on June 2nd, 2001, the once glorious Naryaniti Palace in Kathmandu was drenched in blood. The massacre of Nepal's beloved royal family shocked the nation to its core, leaving an entire country grappling with grief, rage, and an avalanche of unanswered questions. For centuries, the Shah dynasty had been the beating heart of Nepal. Revered as incarnations of Lord Vishnu, the monarchs were more than rulers. They were divine figures, the custodians of tradition, and symbols of national pride. King Birendra, the reigning monarch, was especially adored. Known as a kind and progressive leader, he was a unifying force in a country often divided by caste, geography, and politics. But beneath the gilded veneer of palace life, shadows loomed. Whispers of internal strife, political pressure, and family tensions had begun to seep out from the palace walls. No one, however, could have predicted the catastrophic events about to unfold. It began like any other family gathering at the Naryanhiti Palace. A royal dinner in the billiard hall, an opulent room adorned with chandeliers and regal portraits. The air was thick with formality and familial pride. King Birendra and Queen Aishwarya, their two beloved sons, Crown Prince Dipendra and Prince Nirajan, and Princess Shruti, their only daughter, were joined by other close relatives. It was a rare moment of intimacy for a family burdened by duty. But as the evening progressed, a dark storm brewed behind the eyes of Crown Prince Dipendra. By all accounts, Dipendra was a man of contradictions, a charming, intelligent heir with a penchant for luxury, but also a troubled soul battling addiction and mental anguish. The pressure to live up to his royal destiny had pushed him to the brink. Then came the explosion of violence. Without warning, Dipendra left the dinner and returned armed to the teeth with automatic weapons and ammunition. Witnesses would later describe his transformation as chilling. His expression void of emotion as he began his horrifying rampage. Bullets ripped through the once peaceful hall as Dipendra systematically turned on his family. King Birendra, the pillar of the dynasty, was shot at point-blank range as chaos erupted. Queen Aishwarya, known for her fierce will, reportedly tried to confront her son but met the same tragic fate. Relatives scrambled to escape, but the Crown Prince showed no mercy. The massacre lasted mere minutes, but its impact would last a lifetime. By the time the gunfire ceased, 10 members of Nepal's royal family lay dead, and Dipendra himself was gravely wounded. A self-inflicted gunshot in what seemed to be a final act of despair. News of the massacre spread like wildfire. Overnight, The streets of Kathmandu were flooded with the mourners, their cries of disbelief echoing through the city. People gathered outside the palace gates, clutching candles and photographs of the late king. Nepal, a nation where the monarchy was intertwined with religion and identity, had lost its divine protectors. It felt like the end of the world, one witness said, tears streaming down her face. We worshipped them. How could this happen? The official statement from the palace was both shocking and vague, citing a sudden tragedy without elaborating. Rumors filled the vacuum of information, with conspiracy theories taking root almost instantly. Had Dipendra truly killed his own family? Or was this an orchestrated coup disguised as a family feud? Dipendra, though comatose, was still alive when he was declared king in the immediate aftermath of the massacre, a macabre technicality of royal succession. For 3 agonizing days, the people of Nepal watched as their new king lay unconscious, tethered to life by a thread. His reign, though short-lived, became a surreal footnote in the country's history. When Dipendra succumbed to his injuries on June 4th, the monarchy was left in shambles. Prince Gyanendra, King Birendra's younger brother and a controversial figure in his own right, ascended the throne. But for a grieving nation, his rule would forever be shadowed by suspicion. Why would Crown Prince Dipendra, the heir to a centuries-old throne, commit such a heinous act? Official reports pointed to a cocktail of alcohol, drugs, and deep resentment over his family's disapproval of his love life. Dipendra had fallen for Devyani Rana, a woman deemed unsuitable by royal standards due to her family's political affiliations. He loved her deeply, a palace insider claimed, but his parents' rejection of their relationship tore him apart. But for many, this explanation was too simple, too neat. Could unrequited love alone drive a prince to massacre his family? Or was there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Almost as soon as the bodies were counted, theories began to swirl. Was Dipendra a pawn in a larger game of power? Some speculated that Gyanendra, the new king, had orchestrated the massacre to claim the throne. Others pointed to foreign interference, suggesting that enemies of Nepal's monarchy had staged the tragedy to destabilize the country. The inconsistencies in the official narrative only fueled these suspicions. Why were there no surviving palace staff to testify? How did a single man carry out such a coordinated attack without detection? And why did the investigation seem hurried, as if designed to close the case rather than uncover the truth? For Nepal, the royal massacre marked the beginning of the end for the Shah dynasty. Once revered as gods, the royal family became a symbol of scandal and tragedy. Just 7 years later, the monarchy was abolished, replaced by a federal democratic republic. The massacre, many believe, was the final nail in the coffin of a crumbling institution. But for the people of Nepal, the questions remain. Who was Dipendra, really? A troubled prince consumed by rage? A scapegoat in a grand conspiracy? Or both? To this day, the events of June 1st, 2001 haunt Nepal. The massacre was not just the loss of a family, but the collapse of an entire way of life. It was a moment when divine rulers became mortal victims, their blood staining the walls of the palace and the pages of history. What began as a quiet family dinner in the opulent Narayaniti Palace would end in one of the most horrifying massacres the modern world has ever seen. As the clock struck 8:30 p.m. on June 1st, 2001, no one inside the palace could have foreseen the bloodbath about to unfold, an event that would leave an indelible scar on Nepal's history. The billiard hall of the Naryanhiti Palace was a picture of royal elegance that night, its velvet drapes casting a regal glow over the room. The royal family had gathered for their traditional monthly dinner, a rare occasion where titles were set aside and familial bonds took center stage. King Birendra, always the gracious host, welcomed his relatives with warm smiles, his demeanor as unassuming as ever despite the weight of his crown. Beside him was Queen Aishwarya, a commanding presence known for her sharp intellect and strong-willed personality. Their children, Crown Prince Deependra, Prince Nirajan, and Princess Shruti, completed the picture of a tight-knit family. Guests mingled over drinks, laughter echoing through the hall. But one person in the room was hiding a tempest of emotions behind a carefully composed facade. Crown Prince Dipendra. His charming smile and polite exchanges betrayed none of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. As the evening wore on, Dipendra's mood began to shift. Witnesses would later recall subtle changes in his behavior, long silences, a tightening of his jaw, and a refusal to meet his parents' gaze. The source of his frustration was no secret within the family. His love for Devyani Rana, the woman he hoped to marry, had been met with staunch opposition from King Birendra and Queen Aishwarya. The pressure to conform to royal expectations had been mounting for years, and Dipendra's increasing dependence on alcohol and drugs had only worsened his state of mind. On this particular evening, his anger and despair reached a boiling point. He was calm, too calm, a surviving relative later recounted. It was the kind of calm that hides a storm. At approximately 9:00 p.m., Dipendra excused himself from the gathering, retreating to his quarters. When he returned, the atmosphere in the billiard hall shifted dramatically. He was armed with an M16 rifle, a submachine gun, and a pistol, an arsenal that turned the room into a war zone within seconds. Without warning, Dipendra opened fire. The first shots rang out, striking King Birendra. Chaos erupted as guests screamed and scrambled for cover. Queen Aishwarya, ever the protective mother, reportedly rushed toward her son, shouting his name in disbelief. She, too, was gunned down in cold blood. Prince Nirajan, just 22 years old, tried to shield his father, but was fatally shot in the process. Princess Shruti, a mother of two, was among the victims, her life cut tragically short. Other relatives, including King Birendra's brother and sister-in-law, also fell to Dipendra's merciless assault. Amid the carnage, a handful of relatives managed to escape with their lives. One such survivor was Princess Komal, Dipendra's aunt, who later recounted the horrifying scene. "It was like a nightmare," she said. "There was blood everywhere, and the sound of gunfire was deafening. It didn't feel real." Komal managed to drag herself to safety, despite being severely injured. Her testimony, along with those of other survivors, would later become crucial in piecing together the sequence of events that unfolded that fateful night. As the massacre neared its grim conclusion, Dipendra turned the gun on himself. He was found sprawled on the palace grounds, unconscious but still breathing, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The once promising heir to the throne was now a bloodied figure of tragedy, his actions leaving behind a shattered dynasty. Dipendra's survival, though brief, added another layer of complexity to the tragedy. By virtue of royal succession, he was declared king while still in a coma, a macabre twist that further deepened the nation's sorrow and confusion. The morning after the massacre, Nepal awoke to a nightmare. The streets of Kathmandu were filled with mourners, their grief palpable as they gathered outside the palace gates. The official announcement, delivered with a cold formality, left more questions than answers. On the night of June 1st, 2001, a tragedy befell the royal family, the statement read. His Majesty King Birendra and Her Majesty Queen Aishwarya, along with other esteemed members of the family, are no longer with us. The brevity of the statement did little to quell the public's hunger for details. How could the Crown Prince, a man groomed for greatness, commit such an atrocity? And why had the palace allowed him to assume the throne, even symbolically, in the wake of his actions? As the days passed, two conflicting narratives began to emerge. The official account blamed Dipendra's substance abuse and emotional instability, painting the massacre as the tragic outburst of a man pushed to his breaking point. But for many, this explanation was far too simple. Conspiracy theories soon began to circulate, fueled by inconsistencies in the investigation and the palace's reluctance to release details. Some accused Prince Gyanendra, King Birendra's younger brother and the eventual successor, of orchestrating the massacre to seize power. Others suggested foreign involvement, pointing to Nepal's precarious geopolitical position as a possible motive. While the public speculated on the causes of the massacre, the psychological toll on Nepal's citizens became increasingly evident. For a nation that had revered its monarchs as divine, the idea that the crown prince could slaughter his own family was almost too much to bear. Religious leaders struggled to reconcile the massacre with the monarchy's spiritual significance. If the king is an incarnation of Vishnu, one priest lamented, then what does this tragedy say about our faith? As details of the massacre trickled out, scrutiny fell on the palace staff and security personnel. How had Dipendra been able to smuggle multiple firearms into a high-security location? Why hadn't anyone intervened sooner? These questions, coupled with the palace's tight-lipped approach, only deepened the public's distrust. Many began to suspect that key details were being deliberately concealed, further fueling conspiracy theories. By the time Dipendra succumbed to his injuries on June 4th, the Shah dynasty was irrevocably shattered. Prince Gyanendra's ascension to the throne was met with mixed reactions, his rule overshadowed by suspicions of foul play. For the people of Nepal, the monarchy, once a source of unity and pride, had become a symbol of betrayal and loss. Even decades later, the events of June 2001, remain shrouded in mystery. Was Dipendra solely responsible for the massacre, or was he a scapegoat in a larger conspiracy? What role, if any, did internal palace politics play in the tragedy? And could the massacre have been prevented? When the gunfire ceased at Narayaniti Palace, the physical carnage was clear, but the emotional and political fallout was only beginning. Nepal, a nation rooted in monarchy and tradition, was thrust into a state of grief, disbelief, and chaos. What followed was a cascade of reactions, from public mourning to the spread of sinister conspiracy theories that deepened the tragedy. The morning of June 2nd, 2001, brought an eerie silence to Nepal. News of the massacre had spread like wildfire, and the streets of Kathmandu were filled with grieving citizens. Thousands gathered outside Narayaniti Palace, lighting candles and offering prayers. Their faces bore a collective expression of shock and devastation. The Shah dynasty wasn't just a ruling family, it was a symbol of unity, divinity, and national identity. People cried openly in the streets. One witness recalled, "It felt as though we had lost not just a king, but our father, our protector." The state funeral, held on the day of the massacre, was a somber affair. King Birendra's body, draped in ceremonial regalia, was carried through the capital in a slow procession. The streets were lined with mourners, many of whom chanted prayers and threw flower petals as the funeral cortege passed. The sheer scale of the turnout underscored the deep bond between the monarchy and its people. Crown Prince Dipendra's brief reign as king added an unsettling twist to an already incomprehensible tragedy. Despite being comatose from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, Dipendra was declared king by virtue of succession laws. For 3 days, Nepal had a ruler who could neither speak nor govern, a grim symbol of the chaos that had engulfed the country. When Dipendra succumbed to his injuries on June 4th, his death brought both an end to his reign and a host of unanswered questions. How had a beloved heir to the throne turned into a mass murderer? And why had the palace allowed him to ascend the throne, even symbolically, after the massacre? With Dipendra gone, the throne passed to Prince Gyanendra, King Birendra's younger brother. Gyanendra's ascension was fraught with controversy, as many Nepalese viewed him with suspicion. Unlike his brother, who had been celebrated for his progressive and benevolent leadership, Gyanendra had a reputation for ambition and secrecy. The new king's first public address did little to quell the unease. His statement, delivered in a monotone voice, focused on stability and unity but offered no new insights into the massacre. For many, his rise to power felt less like a natural transition and more like a calculated move. Gyanendra didn't mourn, one political analyst observed. He seized. The palace's version of events was straightforward. Dipendra, fueled by alcohol, drugs, and rage over his parents' refusal to approve his marriage to Devyani Rana, had murdered his family in a moment of madness. The explanation, while plausible, left much to be desired. Key questions went unanswered. How had Dipendra obtained the firearms used in the massacre? Why had no palace security intervened during the shooting? And why were the survivors and staff members prohibited from speaking publicly? The lack of transparency fueled a growing distrust among the Nepalese people. What had once been whispered in private now became the foundation for widespread conspiracy theories. Theories about the massacre's true origins began circulating almost immediately. At their core was a simple premise. Dipendra could not have acted alone. The sheer scale of the attack, combined with the meticulous planning required to smuggle weapons into the palace, suggested that others might have been involved. Some of the most prominent theories included Gyanendra's role. Many speculated that Gyanendra had orchestrated the massacre to claim the throne. His swift rise to power, coupled with his cold demeanor, made him a prime suspect in the court of public opinion. Foreign interference. Given Nepal's precarious geopolitical position, some theorized that foreign powers, seeking to destabilize the monarchy, had orchestrated the massacre as part of a broader agenda, a wider palace coup. Others believed that factions within the royal family or palace staff had conspired to eliminate King Birendra, using Dipendra as a scapegoat to conceal their motives. Each theory found its audience, and the lack of a thorough investigation only added to their credibility. The official inquiry into the massacre was brief, hurried, and shrouded in secrecy. A commission of high-ranking officials was assembled to investigate the events, but their findings raised more questions than answers. The report concluded that Dipendra had acted alone, citing his intoxication and emotional instability as the primary motivators. Critics argued that the investigation was a farce, designed to protect the monarchy's reputation rather than uncover the truth. Evidence was mishandled. Key witnesses were not interviewed, and the final report was released without addressing critical inconsistencies. It felt like they wanted to close the case, not solve it, said a journalist who covered the inquiry. As the details of the investigation, or lack thereof, came to light, public anger boiled over. Protests erupted across Kathmandu, with citizens demanding a more transparent investigation. Chants of "We want the truth" echoed through the streets as demonstrators marched toward the palace gates. The monarchy, once seen as divine, was now viewed with skepticism and contempt. For many, the massacre was not just a personal tragedy, but a symbol of a broken system that prioritized power over accountability. The conspiracy theories and unanswered questions surrounding the royal massacre deepened divisions within Nepalese society. Some remained loyal to the Shah dynasty, clinging to the belief that the monarchy could still serve as a unifying force. Others called for its abolition, arguing that the institution had lost its legitimacy. These divisions would only grow in the years following the massacre, setting the stage for political upheaval and the eventual abolition of the monarchy in 2008. 2 decades after the massacre, the events of June 1st, 2001, remain a source of pain and mystery for Nepal. The official narrative, while widely accepted, has done little to dispel the cloud of suspicion that hangs over the tragedy. For many, the massacre is less a story of a prince's descent into madness and more a cautionary tale about power, secrecy, and the fragility of trust. The massacre of Nepal's royal family left behind a nation grappling with grief, unanswered questions, and an unraveling monarchy. In the months and years that followed, the truth became harder to discern as the official narrative clashed with conspiracy theories, each more sinister than the last. This deepened the cracks in a dynasty already teetering on the edge. Even as the official investigation concluded that Crown Prince Dipendra had acted alone, the people of Nepal were not convinced. The sheer brutality of the attack and the lack of transparency from the palace left a void that conspiracy theories rushed to fill. Each theory painted a different picture of what might have happened that fateful night. Gyanendra's alleged involvement. King Gyanendra, who took the throne after Dependra's death, was the subject of intense scrutiny. His rapid ascension, combined with his reputation for being power-hungry, fueled suspicions that he had orchestrated the massacre to seize the crown. Critics pointed to his convenient absence from the dinner as evidence, suggesting that he had deliberately avoided the carnage. Gyanendra's dismissive approach to the public's questions only strengthened these claims. Another theory suggested that factions within the palace, unhappy with King Birendra's progressive policies, had conspired to eliminate him. These groups, according to this theory, used Dipendra's volatile state as a cover for their own ambitions. Nepal's precarious position between India and China made it a hotbed of geopolitical tension. Some speculated that external powers had a hand in the massacre, aiming to destabilize the monarchy and open the door for influence in the region. There were whispers that Dipendra, comatose and unable to defend himself, had been framed for the massacre. Survivors' accounts and inconsistencies in the timeline fed into this theory, leaving many to wonder if the truth had been buried along with the victims. The official narrative that Dipendra, enraged and intoxicated, had acted alone left many questions unanswered. Among the most glaring were the role of palace security. How had Dipendra been able to bring multiple firearms into the heavily guarded palace without raising suspicion? And why had no security personnel intervened during the massacre? Survivors' silence. The few family members who survived the massacre were conspicuously quiet in its aftermath. Their accounts, when they surfaced, were vague and often contradictory. Gyanendra's convenient absence. Gyanendra's claim that he had been away from the palace during the dinner was met with skepticism. Why was he not present at a family gathering of such importance? These inconsistencies became the backbone of the conspiracy theories, casting a long shadow over the monarchy. For centuries, Nepal's royal family had been seen as divine, believed to be incarnations of Lord Vishnu. The massacre shattered this perception, revealing the human flaws and vulnerabilities behind the crown. The revelation that the supposed divine rulers could fall victim to internal conflict and violence shook the nation's faith, not just in the monarchy, but in the cultural and religious values it represented. Religious leaders grappled with the implications of the massacre. Temples held special prayers to cleanse the monarchy of its sins, while spiritual guides urged the public to seek solace in tradition and resilience. Yet, for many Nepalese, the massacre marked the beginning of a shift away from the idealization of the monarchy. The royal massacre didn't just destabilize the palace. It sent shockwaves through Nepal's political landscape. King Birendra had been a stabilizing force, guiding the country through a delicate transition from absolute monarchy to constitutional rule. His death created a power vacuum that King Gyanendra struggled to fill. Public distrust of the monarchy grew under Gyanendra's reign, as his authoritarian tendencies became evident. His decision to dissolve parliament and assume direct control in 2005 was met with widespread protests, further eroding the monarchy's legitimacy. The massacre had not just killed a family, it had fatally wounded the institution they represented. By 2006, Nepal was in the midst of a full-blown political revolution. Pro-democracy movements gained momentum, fueled by public outrage over Gyanendra's actions and the lingering trauma of the royal massacre. The monarchy, once seen as the bedrock of Nepalese identity, was now viewed as a relic of a bygone era. In 2008, the Nepalese Constituent Assembly officially abolished the monarchy, declaring Nepal a federal democratic republic. Gyanendra, the last king of Nepal, was forced to vacate the palace and live as a private citizen. The abolition of the monarchy marked the end of a 240-year-old dynasty, a dramatic conclusion to a story that had begun with divine reverence and ended in blood and scandal. Throughout this tumultuous period, the media played a critical role in shaping public perception of the massacre and its aftermath. Investigative journalists delved into the inconsistencies in the official narrative, while international outlets highlighted the broader implications of Nepal's political transformation. Documentaries, books, and articles about the massacre proliferated, each offering new theories and insights. While these works kept the story alive, they also contributed to the growing web of speculation, making it harder to separate fact from fiction. Even decades later, the events of June 1, 2001, remain shrouded in mystery. For many Nepalese, the unanswered questions are a source of ongoing frustration and grief. Why was the investigation so rushed? Who stood to gain from the massacre? And most importantly, will the full truth ever come to light? These questions continue to fuel debates and discussions, keeping the memory of the royal massacre alive in the public consciousness. While the massacre and the monarchy's collapse marked a dark chapter in Nepal's history, they also paved the way for a new era. The transition to democracy has been fraught with challenges, but it has also empowered the people of Nepal to take control of their future. For younger generations, the monarchy is a distant memory, a story told by their parents and grandparents. Yet, the lessons of the massacre about power, accountability, and the fragility of institutions remain relevant. The Royal Massacre of 2001 is more than just a historical event. It is a reminder of the complexities of power, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the enduring impact of unresolved truths. While the Shah dynasty has faded into history, its tragic end continues to resonate, challenging Nepal to confront its past and build a more transparent and inclusive future. The Royal Massacre of June 2001 didn't just end lives. It marked the beginning of the end for Nepal's monarchy, a 240-year-old institution that had defined the nation's identity. The fallout from that fateful night sent shockwaves through the country, accelerating its transition from a monarchy to a democratic republic. What followed was a tumultuous journey of political upheaval, societal transformation, and a redefinition of Nepal's place in the modern world. The Shah dynasty had once stood as a pillar of divine authority, its rulers believed to be incarnations of Lord Vishnu. But the massacre shattered that illusion, exposing the monarchy's vulnerability and human flaws. When King Gyanendra took the throne after the deaths of King Birendra and Crown Prince Dipendra, he inherited not just a crown, but a nation fractured by grief, suspicion, and a growing sense of disillusionment. Gyanendra's reign began under a cloud of mistrust. Unlike his brother, King Birendra, who had been seen as a progressive leader willing to embrace constitutional reforms. Gyanendra was viewed as autocratic and disconnected from the people. His reluctance to address the unanswered questions surrounding the massacre further eroded public confidence in the monarchy. As Nepal grappled with the trauma of the massacre, it also faced mounting political challenges. The Maoist insurgency, which had been gaining strength since the mid-1990s, escalated its campaign against the government, calling for the abolition of the monarchy and the establishment of a communist state. The insurgency, combined with widespread poverty and social inequality, created a volatile environment. Gyanendra's response to these challenges only deepened the crisis. In 2005, he dissolved parliament and declared a state of emergency, assuming direct control of the government. His justification was the need to restore stability and combat the Maoist threat, but his actions were widely seen as a power grab. The move sparked nationwide protests, with citizens demanding the restoration of democracy. The monarchy, once revered as a unifying force, was now viewed by many as a relic of a feudal past, out of touch with the needs and aspirations of the people. The turning point came in April 2006, when Nepal witnessed a historic pro-democracy movement known as the People's Movement, Jana Andolan II. For 19 days, millions of Nepalese from all walks of life took to the streets, demanding an end to Gyanendra's autocratic rule and the restoration of democratic governance. The protests were unprecedented in scale and intensity. In Kathmandu, demonstrators clashed with security forces, enduring tear gas and bullets in their fight for freedom. Yet, the movement remained largely peaceful, a testament to the people's unwavering commitment to change. Faced with overwhelming opposition, Gyanendra relented. On April 24, 2006, he announced the reinstatement of Parliament, marking a significant victory for the pro-democracy movement. The king's power was drastically reduced, and the monarchy's days were clearly numbered. The final blow came in 2008, when Nepal's Constituent Assembly voted overwhelmingly to abolish the monarchy and declare the country a federal democratic republic. Gyanendra, the last king of Nepal, was given 2 weeks to vacate the royal palace. On June 11, 2008, Gyanendra left Narayanhiti Palace for the last time, walking out as a private citizen. It was a moment of profound symbolism, the end of a dynasty that had ruled Nepal for over 2 centuries. For many Nepalese, the abolition of the monarchy was a cause for celebration, a long overdue step toward equality and modernity. But for others, it was a bittersweet moment, tinged with nostalgia for a bygone era. The fall of the monarchy ushered in a period of profound transformation for Nepal. The country adopted a new constitution in 2015, establishing itself as a secular, inclusive republic. The caste system, long entrenched in Nepalese society, began to lose its grip, and efforts to empower marginalized communities gained momentum. Yet, the transition was not without challenges. Political instability, corruption, and economic struggles continued to plague the nation. The scars of the Maoist insurgency, which ended in 2006 with a peace agreement, remained visible, as did the lingering trauma of the royal massacre. The legacy of the monarchy remains a contentious topic in Nepal. For some, it is remembered as a source of unity and pride, a symbol of the nation's cultural and spiritual heritage. For others, it represents oppression, inequality, and a resistance to progress. The royal massacre itself has become a focal point of this debate. Was it the tragic culmination of a dysfunctional family's internal conflicts, or a symbol of a broader societal breakdown? Did it expose the monarchy's fragility? Or was it a convenient excuse for those seeking its abolition? These questions continue to shape Nepal's collective memory, serving as both a cautionary tale and a reminder of the need for accountability and transparency. Perhaps the most significant outcome of the royal massacre and the subsequent fall of the monarchy is the empowerment of the Nepalese people. The People's Movement of 2006 demonstrated the power of collective action and the importance of civic engagement. It was a moment when ordinary citizens took control of their destiny, refusing to be silenced by fear or oppression. Today, Nepal's democracy, though imperfect, stands as a testament to the resilience and determination of its people. The country has faced immense challenges, from natural disasters to political upheaval, but it has also shown a remarkable capacity for renewal and growth. The events of June 1, 2001 remain a dark chapter in Nepal's history. For many, the massacre represents a loss of innocence, a moment when the ideals of divinity and tradition were shattered by violence and betrayal. Yet, it also serves as a reminder of the importance of confronting uncomfortable truths and learning from the past. As Nepal continues to navigate its path forward, the lessons of the royal massacre remain relevant. They underscore the dangers of unchecked power, the need for accountability, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The massacre of Nepal's royal family on June 1, 2001, is a haunting reminder of how power, tradition, and unchecked ambition can collide with devastating consequences. Decades later, the tragedy remains a pivotal moment in Nepal's history, a dark chapter that forced the nation to confront its identity, question its institutions, and chart a new path forward. For many Nepalese, the massacre represents the end of an era. The Shah dynasty, once seen as the living embodiment of divinity and stability, crumbled under the weight of its own internal fractures. The event shattered the illusion of invincibility that had surrounded the monarchy, exposing its vulnerability and fallibility. But the massacre also served as a catalyst for change. It marked the beginning of the monarchy's decline and the rise of democratic movements that ultimately reshaped Nepal into a federal democratic republic. While the monarchy's fall was a painful process, it cleared the way for a more inclusive and participatory political system. The massacre forced Nepal to re-evaluate its cultural and societal norms, particularly those surrounding power, hierarchy, and identity. The monarchy's connection to religion had long been a cornerstone of Nepalese culture, with kings revered as incarnations of Lord Vishnu. The tragedy called this divine association into question, prompting a broader examination of the role of tradition in modern governance. Younger generations, in particular, have embraced a more progressive and pragmatic worldview. For them, the royal massacre is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of placing too much trust in unaccountable institutions. They view the event not as a loss of identity, but as an opportunity to forge a new one, rooted in equality and transparency. Despite the passage of time, the royal massacre remains shrouded in mystery. Key questions about the event linger. Why was the investigation rushed? The official inquiry into the massacre was brief and left many inconsistencies unaddressed. What role, if any, did palace staff and security play? The lack of intervention during the attack has fueled speculation about complicity or negligence. Was Dipendra truly the sole perpetrator? While the official narrative points to his emotional instability and substance abuse, conspiracy theories suggest that he may have been a scapegoat for larger forces. These unanswered questions continue to fuel debate and speculation, keeping the memory of the massacre alive in the public consciousness. The Royal Massacre offers several lessons that extend beyond Nepal's borders, providing valuable insights into the nature of power, trust, and societal transformation. The fragility of power. Even the most entrenched institutions can collapse under the weight of internal conflict and public distrust. The massacre underscores the importance of accountability and transparency in maintaining legitimacy. The dangers of idealization. The Shah dynasty's divine status created a facade of invincibility that masked its underlying vulnerabilities. The tragedy highlights the risks of placing individuals or institutions on pedestals. The need for resilience. Nepal's ability to recover from the massacre and transition to democracy demonstrates the resilience of its people. The tragedy, while devastating, became a turning point that paved the way for a more inclusive future. In the years since the massacre, Nepal has undergone significant transformation. The transition to a federal democratic republic has been challenging, marked by political instability, economic struggles, and social tensions. Yet, the country has also made strides in promoting equality, empowering marginalized communities, and fostering a more participatory political culture. For many Nepalese, the lessons of the Royal Massacre continue to inform their vision for the country's future. Civic engagement, grassroots activism, and calls for greater transparency have become hallmarks of Nepal's evolving democracy. The Royal Massacre remains a deeply personal and emotional topic for many Nepalese. Survivors, relatives, and citizens alike continue to grapple with its implications. For some, it is a source of grief and loss. For others, a reminder of the need for vigilance and reform. June 1st, 2001, changed everything, said one Kathmandu resident. It was the day we lost not just a royal family, but a sense of who we were. But it was also the day we started to become something new. Globally, the Royal Massacre serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, secrecy, and the idealization of leadership. It is a story that resonates far beyond Nepal, offering lessons for governments, institutions, and societies around the world. As Nepal continues to move forward, the memory of the massacre remains a solemn reminder of the cost of complacency and the importance of accountability. While the wounds of the Royal Massacre may never fully heal, Nepal's resilience offers hope for the future. The country's ability to confront its past, embrace change, and chart a new course is a testament to the strength of its people. The massacre may have marked the end of one chapter in Nepal's history, but it also heralded the beginning of another, one defined by possibility, progress, and the enduring spirit of its citizens. The Royal Massacre of 2001 is more than just a historical event. It is a story of loss, transformation, and renewal. It is a reminder of the complexities of power and the resilience of the human spirit. For Nepal, it is a chapter in an ongoing journey, one that continues to unfold as the country builds a future rooted in democracy, inclusivity, and hope. The story of the Royal Massacre is not just about what was lost. It is about what was gained and the lessons that will guide Nepal for generations to come.